All right, thank you, Stephanie. Welcome, everyone. So to get things started, the first question that we want to talk about is, of course, Startup Boston is the best conference you could be attending. But if you wanted to check out other conferences in the Boston area, how could you figure out which ones would be best for you to attend? How do you prepare for them? How do you develop your personal elevator pitch? And I'm going to throw this one to you, Pardees, to start us off.
Hello, yes. Awesome. So basically what I like to do is look at the invite list first and just see if that's available, who's coming. If you've been seeing some events on Luma or Partiful, they usually publish the invite list once you're approved to be on the RSVP list. I usually will then go and look everyone up on LinkedIn and try to figure out like who is it that I want to meet and put them into like two little groups, like people that I really want to meet really well, and then people that I will probably see there but aren't useful for me, just so I know and look out for them so I don't get stuck in a conversation that I know is not going to work out in any way, shape, or form. What I like to also do is prepare different pitches for different types of people that I'm going to be meeting. So if it's like an investor, I'll have an investor pitch. If I'm trying to look for a job, I'll have a look for a job pitch. If I am trying to find a partnership, I'll be talking about the partnership and how that will actually help both people instead of just me. And then if it's just a me pitch, then you have to know like who you are in 30 seconds, what you're looking for, and exactly who you want to meet.
That's great. Yeah, I love that you're really trying to think about it from all angles before you jump in.
Okay.
Great. Does anyone else want to jump in on this one?
Sure.
Go for it.
So I have kind of like I chop it up to like the top three. So first and foremost, think about your end game. What is your goal? What industry do you play in or would you like to break into? So filter those events based on your interests and your availability. To Pardees's point, research the guest list or the panelists if that list is available to you so you can identify the players in the room to evaluate if it's going to be worth your time to go. Not every conference will be a hit. It will be trial and error, but keep an open mind. The second being, set a goal for the night. If you're someone who is not comfortable networking or you're just getting started, by going into the evening with a goal in mind, I want to meet X amount of people or have a conversation with one particular person, you'll really be surprised at how fast you adapt and get the end result that you're after. And number three, get up, dress up, and show up. Just do it. Could it be a bust? Sure. Is it more fun to stay snuggled up, binging your favorite show? Absolutely. But you could also be in turn missing out on an opportunity to meet somebody that could be a star player in your ecosystem or that one particular person that could propel you to the next phase of where you want to get.
Totally.
Yeah, I would add setting an achievable goal, I think, is really important. So your goal is not to go to a conference and fill your pipeline. It could be just to meet 5 people, right? And sort of set the groundwork to build those relationships. One thing that has been told to me and that I like to say is networking is like playing tennis. Your goal is not to get the ball hit to you and then, grab it and sort of pitch yourself and talk all about all the things you do. Is to hit the ball right back to them. So, when you're preparing your introduction, I like to say, keep that 1 to 2 sentences and get the ball back to that person so that, you're being interested in them so that you come off interesting. And then, that gives you the ability, one is to obviously have a bunch of different interactions and most importantly, like a bunch of positive interactions, which is, at least if it's one of your first conferences, that should be kind of the goal and an achievable goal.
And actually, on that note of introductions, I think, are we getting some feedback? Is anyone else hearing that? Is that better now? Okay, good. On that note of introductions, I did not cue everyone to introduce themselves. So hopefully now we have more people in the room. Let's just go around. Matt, can you start us off with the introductions? Just tell us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So to prove my point, so I like to say I'm Matt Crane, the founder of MGMT Boston, a media company that highlights top Boston startups and the up-and-coming operators that help them grow, and then leave it there.
Great, thank you. Pardees.
Hi, I'm Pardees. I'm the head of platform services at Smashing Boxes, which is a digital transformation agency and venture studio based out of Durham, North Carolina. but I'm in Boston.
Okay, great. And Elena?
Sure. So my name is Elena LoBianco. I am a business consultant with TriNet. We are an outsourced HR services partner for startups and small businesses.
Great. And my name's Amalia. I'm a software engineer at Harvard's School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. Okay, so continuing on. So once you have a game plan for which conferences you want to be going to, you kind of know who you might want to be talking to. You're actually getting to the conference. What is some general advice that you can give to folks once they're starting to attend networking events and maybe it's their first time? How should they approach things? Matt, do you want to speak to this a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the work that you do up front is just as important as the work you do, when you're there. So Pardees, I think, laid that out really nice in terms of, thinking about the different types of people that are there and how you want to approach that. I think what I would say is, the people in the room are probably the most important because those are the people you would spend the most time with. And then the content is probably like 1B or second in terms of, you're going there to learn something. And then to take that learning ideally and after the sort of content session, apply that to networking. So those are kind of like the ways that I would weigh the quality of the event. And then I think there's just simple things to do, like, you want to give yourself time to get there. You don't want to come in like sweating because you've been, you didn't know where to park and you're running up the elevator bank and you're trying to fight through security. Like different things to enter like into a calm Zen environment. I have obviously seen people that, I know, and you could tell like they're sweating, they're running behind, they were trying to get to this session. Oh, hey, do you know where so-and-so is? And they didn't really map the layout. Like, some of the just simple stuff around understanding like, what is the layout of the event or the conference? Startup Boston is on multiple floors. Like, take some time to understand, what that layout looks like. I have done training runs in the past where, if it's a place I'm going for the first time and I know I'm going to be in the general area the week before, I'll just kind of drive by just to understand like what I'm looking at. Like anything you can do to remove the extraneous stuff so that you can focus on the actual event and the people that you're going to get and show up like as your best self. I think that's like half, if not more than half of the battle.
Yeah, totally. That's great. Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in on this one? Yeah, I would also add, if you're nervous about attending, I've brought someone with me in the past to just like have a wingman. They don't have to be interested in the event. Just, have a backup there to, give yourself some confidence when you're going for the first time. And so on that note, maybe you didn't bring someone with you, you're going to a new event for the first time and you walk into a room full of people that you don't know. What tips do you have for someone who might find themselves in that situation? Elena?
Sure. So confidence. And if you lack in that department, fake it till you make it. When you enter into a room, don't look down, don't fidget, don't, keep to yourself, hold your head high, scan the room, smile, and enter in confidently. Walk up to somebody that you might recognize either from your prep LinkedIn creeping, or if you recognize somebody from an article that you had read, that's a good in to go and introduce yourself to somebody that you may not know. Been to a lot of events where it seems like people are kind of grouped together or clicked off already. We're all there to do the same thing, remember. So don't feel too hesitant. I know it's a little nerve-wracking, but break into the circle. Just say, hi, can I join your group? 9 times out of 10, everybody says yes. Welcome in, introduce yourself, and you get into a conversation. Again, we're all there to do the same thing. So on the flip side, don't feel too discouraged if you walk up to a group and they kind of give you a little bit of a cold shoulder. If they try to shut you out, then move on. Move to a different group. Your time is just as valuable.
Yeah, those are all great points. That's definitely something I've had to get over, is the feeling of like, nope, you just got to go in, just introduce yourself. Don't worry about it. Pardees, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I like to give people compliments as like an easy way in, because they always have to say thank you afterwards, and then they have to talk to you because then they feel indebted to you. So I like to tell people, "Oh, I like your shoes." I think it works better for women than men. So sorry, Matt and the men here, but or like your nails, or like your hair, or like, "Oh, nice outfit." Nice outfit works like 90% of the time, because then we're just talking about like where it's from, and then we talk about what we're doing here and like why we dressed up a certain way, and then we can kind of get into it. I also just like to just jump in, and like practice makes perfect doing this. It's just like just practice, and just like most people, if they have like a U and it's like kind of like a horseshoe, that usually means that the circle's open, and it's like anyone else can jump in and just kind of like park your spot there. So I try to find all the horseshoes in the room and start there, and then start kind of like working my way around, and then I'll ask people who they met before and who they found interesting, and then I have them introduce me to someone else, and you can kind of just start like bubbling around and bouncing around that way.
Pardees, I was just going to say that, as it was told to me, it's called the Pacman. So you look for like the little opening and find the Pacmans for where you can plug in. And then conversely, try to pay it forward. So leave, your group, make your group a little Pacman so that there's room for other people to enter.
Nice. Yeah. I like these tips for like cues to look out for, and also just starting the conversation off with like, it doesn't have to be related to the event exactly, right? You can just kind of get to know each other as people first. I like that. So hopefully you're going to be finding yourselves in lots of great, really nice and fulfilling conversations, but sometimes we might find ourselves talking to someone that doesn't feel like the best fit, doesn't feel like who you're trying to meet at the event. What tips do you have for ending that kind of conversation so that you can find the people that you really want to be getting to know? Pardees, can I throw this one to you?
Yeah, so I usually go to the bathroom and then take a minute and come out when I'm that's like when I started, when I was like a network beginner. That's what I used to do, and just be like, "Oh, I need to go do something," or "Oh, I need to go take this text message or take this phone call," and just kind of like step away from the person a little bit, and then do like a little bit of like a run around the room and come back and find someone else to talk to. Now that I'm like more of a networking pro, I usually just tell them like, "Hey, like, I don't know if there's any way I can help you. I don't think there is. If there is, just please let me know, and then let's move on and talk to other people." And other times I'll be like, "Hey, like, I think like we've had a good conversation. Let's keep in touch. If we actually like, if I like them as a person, I'll just keep in touch with them as a person, because people are people. And at the end of the day, and then I'll be like, "Hey, you go on a cruise with me and see someone else to talk to?" And usually they say yes, and then we can go on cruise together.
That's a great tip. I've never heard of that one. That's really good. Elena, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, my two go-tos are either I excuse myself to go to the bathroom, or I really need to get some water, if you'll excuse me, and exchange your information. This way, if anything does come out later down the line, you do still have that reference point. But it's a good way to it's a good chance to get a breather. Networking can be overwhelming, especially if you're someone whose social battery only has so much capacity. So it's a good chance to just step away, take a second to recharge. But on the flip side, also be cognizant that you're not being that person. If the conversation turns and it's very one-sided, or you're the only one who is engaged in the conversation, let them go. Feel out the vibe in the conversation. And if it's kind of dull, if you're the only one who is offering things and you're kind of sitting there just talking to a rock, then it's okay for you to step away if you're not the person that they want to talk to either.
Yeah, that's so important, right? Feeling out that balance and having that self-awareness. Totally. Matt, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, of course. I think we have all sort of been in a conversation where someone is looking past us to see like who else is out there. So I think, it should be your goal, hopefully, to create the best experience in that conversation you possibly can, and even like use it as an opportunity to get better. Also believe that you can learn something from everybody. And so even if they're not in your particular industry, well, they might be one step away from someone that can really help you, or they might just be a great person and like you have nothing professional to talk about, but it's a cool personal interaction. You have the same shoes in common, you're from the same town, you like the Patriots, whatever that is. I think trying to like, your brand is almost at stake in every single conversation. I think that's something to be aware of is, you don't want someone like later to be like, "Oh, I was talking to that person over there and like, they're just the worst. They just talk about themselves. They're looking over me the whole time. And like, I'll never forget that, right? People remember how they were treated. So try to make the best interaction you possibly can in each interaction.
Yeah, and to that point, maybe the next question is about like, how do you make sure that when you're having these conversations, right, that feeling of like, oh, they're just looking over my shoulder, they're trying to find somebody else. Like, how do you make sure that you're not making these conversations at networking events feel too transactional, feel like you're just there for this one goal and you're not really interested in the person? Pardees, how do you approach that?
So my favorite thing to do is also just ask them about themselves and just have like little conversations, like Matt was saying, like, you know, like, oh, we like the Patriots, or oh, did you watch this thing, or did you see this weird news article in Boston, or, you know, something else that kind of comes out where you see them as a person. The more people that you can get, the better off you are networking, I would say, instead of just being like, oh, I do this, and like, oh, I do that, and okay, cool, let's just stare at each other for a little while. That's good, can get very transactional, or just like ask her opinion on something, like, oh, did you see this like fundraising news about this company, like what do you think about it, and just kind of get their advice, because again, like as you start the conversation and get more out of them, the more likely it is to become less transactional and more as like a real conversation where they actually remember having a conversation with you too.
Yeah, that's great. That's really nice. We have a question in the chat. If anyone has any specific tips for introverts. Anyone have any thoughts?
I'm an extrovert.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely identify with that. I am an introvert for sure, especially at these kinds of events. So for me, it's just been a lot of kind of telling myself like, okay, I know I'm an introvert, but I just have to really push past that, give myself little challenges. When I go to events like this, okay, I'm going to find one new person and I'm going to have a conversation with them, or that group over there. Okay, I'm going to go talk to them. Anyone else have any tips for, even if you yourself are not an introvert, what you've heard introverted friends do, or what you might do if you were an introvert?
So I am an extrovert by nature, but I get shy sometimes. I get nervous. And I think Matt had a really good point about the small achievable goals. And if you just give yourself one little thing, I'm going to introduce myself to 2 new people today, and that's all you got done. Build it slowly over time. You'll get more comfortable with it. And I think the point was raised, I don't remember which one of you had said it. I started out by bringing a buddy with me, either somebody that I worked with or another friend that I had met out and about. If they're in a different industry than you, that's great. They can help to foster new connections and build new bridges for you. But the buddy system and small achievable goals, when I am feeling like a turtle that day, that I don't want to go into a room with, 100, 200 people, those are my 2 go-tos.
Totally. Yeah. I just moved to Boston recently. I don't know too many people here. I brought my boyfriend to my first event, just bring somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to add anything to this? And if not, we have another question in the chat about just tips for conversation starters. If there's just like, some things that you might have in mind of like, okay, if I really can't think of anything, what are my fallbacks? What are some things that I can like have in my pocket when I walk in the room?
I might say don't ask about the weather or comment on the weather. That's like the stereotypical, like least interesting thing you could do. My fallback, because I'm genuinely interested in this, is like what should, if you don't have sort of a good like topical conversation starter for the actual, event or content, is like, are there any good shows or movies you watched recently? Because I am always building my queue. So it's, in that vein of maybe you don't have that professional connection, but like personally, is there a good sort of Netflix or HBO show that you've watched recently, or Apple TV? Like I'm always building that roster and I can always get interested in that type of conversation. But I think generally, like ideally you're going to an event that is sort of topically related. So I think it's helpful, right? You're there to achieve a goal. You're there to like learn something, is to sort of talk, inside out to that. So for me, I'll say like, hey, I'm looking to meet sort of like really interesting startups in Boston. Like, what are some of the best, startups that you've come across recently? And that's an open question. I'm very interested in that, but it's very easy to grab that because it's pretty open-ended on the other side. So something that's kind of like open and honest, and also like gives that person the opportunity to show their expertise. So it's a starting question that really, platforms them to then sort of take it and run with it. Those are my favorite opening questions.
That's great. Yeah, I really like what's coming through in the conversation is, just think about what are you actually interested in? What will help you have a genuine conversation with someone? And just starting from that, what kind of conversation would you actually be interested in having? Yeah, anyone else want to add anything to this?
I always talk about sports because we're in Boston and everyone loves Boston sports. And so I usually do that and just talk about like the Celtics or the Red Sox or any fun trade facts. I'm just like a nerd too on it too. So I'm just like, oh, did you see this person just added like a cornerback to the Patriots? That was from the Titans. And then, we can start talking about that and what we think the outlook is. That's always a fun way to get things going. Or just like facts about the panelists. Like I usually like to look up the panelists and see what they've been working on and what I'm most interested in them. And then you can also ask someone like, oh, what are you most interested to hear about in this event or this place that we're at? And that's a nice like open-ended question that's like topical to talk about as well.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Why are they there? What are they hoping to get out of the event? Definitely.
People love to talk about themselves.
Kevin Mitchell just put in the chat, hats off to him, question, what's the boldest thing you've done so far in life? That's a memorable question. If you ask people that, they're going to remember you. So I like that one.
And Elena, what were you saying also?
Oh, just the simple fact, people like to talk about themselves. So whether you ask them what they're looking to get out of the event, what they thought of a certain panelist, points or little gems that they maybe have shared, or things in general. Where did they grow up? If it's something that you can tie back and build an emotional bridge. I always say people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So if you just get them talking about themselves, you'll be surprised at how fast the conversation can really turn into something robust.
Definitely. Yeah. These are all great tips. And so as the event is either winding down, maybe, right, you're still trying to make sure that you maybe get to ask for a certain favor from someone, or you're following up after the event. What's the best non-invasive way to get folks to do what they offered to do during your chat with them actually at the event? Maybe they mentioned an opportunity, or you're kind of hoping that you can, learn more about certain opportunities at their company. What's your advice on that? Let's see, Matt, did you have thoughts?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if someone commits to do something in person, you should sort of like assume that remains the case. It of course will not always be. And I think the other thing I would say to that point is there is an ask limit, and that ask limit is sort of like proportional to how busy that person is. So if someone offers to introduce you to someone and they are, let's call it a very busy person, and you're just going to assume they're very busy because they're an executive at a startup or something of that level, a partner at a law firm, what you should do is send them a note and say, hey, thank you for, and ideally you've like done the work up front to get their contact information. If you have not, you could sort of reach out on LinkedIn with a shorter version of this, but you should basically take away additional asks. So you're going to say something like, hey, hey, John, it was so nice to meet you at the event. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be introduced to Pardees. She's one of the best business development people in the world. Here's an introduction you can send to her. And it's ideally it's sort of a 2 to 3 sentence intro on you. If you need anything else from me, let me know. But once again, like, thank you, and leave it there, because they've already made the offer. Don't ask again. Don't put it on them. Just sort of basically tee it up for them to just forward that note. So your goal is not to do the double ask. They've already sort of accepted that. And then if you have a second ask, of course, you can put it in. But just understand that the more asks that you sort of put into the sequence, the harder it is and the more time it's going to take for them to execute. And keep it simple, I think is sort of the general rule of thumb there in my experience.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, keep it simple. Pardees, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I like Matt's tip. That was really nice. But yeah, I think it's like, don't be afraid to follow up either. Cause like I've told people I can help them out, and then it's like so funny, like no one follows up with me ever. I'm like, okay, like did you not really care, or did you not really want this? And if you don't care, then why should I care? Then I'm not gonna help you because I got other things to do in my life too. But it's just really funny how like most people don't even follow up. Like I think out of like I've met like 10, 20 people like over the summer, and like no one followed up with me about anything, which is like so funny. So don't be afraid to follow up if they don't respond right away. They're probably busy. Like the other thing I like to know, like I see notes, I mean like, oh, it looks like, you know, July got away from us. If it's like August now, like do you still like, is your schedule opening up now to make that intro for me? Just like really fun, like little things to do, or like, oh, like, you know, do you have any plans for the weekend, or like how was your long weekend? Just want to make sure that this is top of mind for you. And you can just find like other fun ways of just getting in front of people. And again, if you're new to networking or you're a little bit introverted, it can feel a little bit weird. But that's okay. You can do it. Just pretend you're someone else and send the message. That's what one of my mentors told me. Just make up this other persona that you are, and just be like, I am this person, and this person doesn't care. I'm gonna write this message and send it and see what happens.
Yeah, I really like that about the making up an alternate persona. And also, if someone doesn't get back to you right away, right, don't take it personally. They might be busy. They've got other things going on in their lives. Like, you know, just follow up again.
And LinkedIn's the worst inbox. Like the worst inbox is LinkedIn, and like they're working on making it better, but it just sucks. So like everything just moves around in there, and I can't even like flag anything or organize it or do anything. So that happens a lot too.
Totally, yeah. Elena, did you want to add something?
You guys hit it on the head. Just be genuine with your follow-ups. Matt had a great point. Don't make any additional work for them. If they offer to make an introduction, set that up for them so they don't have to create something. This way you can also kind of tailor the narrative of the way that you would like to come across in that particular introduction. And always lead with the giver mindset. If you promised to follow up on something, do that first before expecting to receive.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, right. Make sure that, you know, when you're in this community, you're paying it forward. You're also doing things to help other people in their goals, definitely. Mm-hmm. So kind of taking an overall look, what have been some highlights for you from your experiences going to networking events, or things that you learned that weren't expected weren't expected or were unintuitive to you at first when you first started networking? Anything that you've changed in your approach to networking? Just kind of taking an overall look.
I can kick off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So like you, I do not hail from Boston. I've been here for just about 2.5 years. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking to enter a new city with a lot of new faces. Give yourself time, give yourself some grace to find your niche. There are a ton of groups and organizations. They're all unique. So find the one that fits you best, your personality, your style, the target audience that you see at a lot of those events. The biggest thing that I've changed is my art of follow-up. I always have a pen on my person. I know it's a little bit, old school. I write everything down. And when you have a stack of 50 business cards at the end of the night and you go through them either later that night or the next day, how do you remember who is who? So I actually jot little notes down on my business cards after I receive them. Or if you're connecting with somebody on LinkedIn, I never have them scan my code. I always scan their code. This way I can take a screenshot of them and remember to follow up that way. And definitely by the next day at the absolute latest. And be personal, tie it back. You know, do they have a dog? Where do they vacation? Where did they grow up? Share common interests during your conversation so that it's not so transactional. Business, yes, but people first. This way your follow-up is memorable. You'll be able to tie that back and they'll remember you from the other stream of, you know, follow-ups that they may or may not be receiving in their inbox. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I like the LinkedIn screenshots. You have that little reminder. That's great.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add anything on this?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
I would
I like
say
this.
Nope.
Go ahead, Matt.
you go.
Go for it.
Ladies first.
No, you go. Men first.
Okay.
Equal
All right. Well, this
opportunity.
is related to you, Pardees. So I'm glad you let me go. I think, I posted about this too, but I think it's important. There, you cannot win Startup Boston. You cannot win. There is no prizes given for the best networker. I have not had any one individual networking event that to me was like so incredible for that event. What has been incredible though is running into people over time. So like building those relationships at multiple events. Pardees and I have been lucky enough to meet like 10 times. And it honestly gets a little bit more fun each time because we have more to talk about and I can catch up on, her last role and her company that got acquired and what she's up to now. And so I remember all that because of the progressive times we've run into each other. And if I ever have an ask that I need to give to her, well, we now have a relationship, which is important. So I think it's not the first Startup Boston that is impactful. It's unfortunately, it's looking out over time and letting that stuff compound. It's the third, fourth, fifth Startup Boston and any other conference or event. Relationships are built over time. I don't think we've ever had a really strong friend or relationship that we've only met one time. So, as your personal life is, your professional life is really not too different. And so I think it's about like putting in the time and the consistency to understand that this stuff takes time. You get better with time. You build relationships with time. And it is not just a volume game, but a consistency game over a long period of time.
Yeah, totally right. Like you're building your community, right? The more you put in, the more you show up, the more that these people become real connections for you. Totally. Pardees, did you want to also jump in?
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing that Matt said, because I also met Elena networking and, met her like a million times, and now we're friends too. We still haven't had a Quincy hang though, so maybe one day we'll do that. But it's just funny that like you meet people over time. Like at Startup Boston last year, I met one of my clients at the taco truck, like eating tacos, and we just talked about tacos the whole time, and they ended up having a startup that had money that hired me to do their marketing for them like 6 months later. So you never know where these opportunities are going to go or like where these relationships are going to go. I would just say be as open as possible, and like you'll have your own little crew. And like my other favorite joke is if you go to like 3 different events in Boston, you'll know most of Boston because we're such a small, tight knit community, which is really nice in some ways. And so you'll make your little crew, and then you'll see your crew over and over again, and then your crew will help you. And so just always tell people like what your next thing is that you need help with, or what you're looking for, even though as that changes over time. And the more they know you and the more trust that builds over time, the more likely they are to help you.
Totally. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this overall topic, on just general highlights or things that you've learned over the years? If not, we also have a few questions in the chat. And also I want to encourage folks as we're kind of getting through the middle to the end of our conversation to put some questions in the chat that the panelists can answer. And so we have a few questions about business cards and business cards versus LinkedIn. What are your preferences? Tips on business cards? Anyone want to start us off?
I do both.
Elena, go ahead. Go for it.
I do. I have, and I'll have to find it. I've got a really cool business card holder, actually, that when you slide this little button, one of them pops out. Kind of as if you're like giving out a stick of gum or something. And that is always a conversation starter because it's cool. It's a little bit nerdy. I like it. And depending on the event that you go to, a lot of people, depending on the demographics, they may not have LinkedIn. They may not be familiar with QR codes and how to scan them for some of our older people. So they like to go old school. So you have to kind of fit within that too. So I do have business cards, or if you don't have business cards, that's totally fine. You can also make them on Canva and get them printed out at like FedEx. Just saying, if you just need a little bit of information. But I like the business cards because I get to write the notes on them. But for people who do not have the business cards, when you do scan them on LinkedIn, again, take that screenshot so it's in your photos. You can look back and remember, okay, great, I'm going to send a message to these people that I connected with. By the next day at the latest, guys, follow-ups are key. The sooner you do it, the better.
Yeah, and I think we, as we were all chatting before the event started, I think we have a pro tip to go to FedEx over Staples for getting things printed. Just not an official endorsement, but word on the street is you'll get the better deal there. It'll work out better. Matt, I saw you nodding your head before. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say just generally you're trying to meet your audience where they are. So I cater to, I guess, startup founders to an extent, but really, people that work inside of startups that are like emerging leaders. And I would say like 90% of them do not have business cards anymore. So LinkedIn is pretty like much the predominant professional matching. I have seen those like business cards with the QR codes where it's almost like a, like a different list of sort of the different ways to meet the people, whether that's like, email or LinkedIn or something else. I think those are cool. I think it's just like whatever works for you. So it's not a business card. Now, a business card, it's like, for me, a business card is now another step for me to like then Google the person or find the person on LinkedIn. So I just prefer to cut right to that because that's like my general kind of CRM touch point from an external point of view. So I'm a no business card person, but I think I don't like, I don't have a reaction when someone gives me a business card negatively necessarily either.
Yeah, right. And it sounds like what you want on the card is just really how you want people to connect with you. Do you want people to be chatting with you on LinkedIn? Do you want them to be emailing you directly? What is most important to you? Let's see. So definitely encouraging folks to put more questions in the chat if you have any, but as we're kind of wrapping up here, well, first, before we kind of get to our last question, did anyone else have any other thoughts that they wanted to add to the conversation? Just anything else that was on your mind, came up for you?
I like text messaging. That's my thing. So if someone gives me like their personal, like their digital business card it's like their contact card basically, I love those too because then you have like a direct line to them. You can just text them, which is my favorite thing to do because then you're cutting through email, you're cutting through LinkedIn, and you're like right in their box that they check the most, which is their text messages, and they're more likely to respond to you there. So that's my favorite thing. And then also for LinkedIn, I usually will write where I met someone in a message to them on LinkedIn after we connect, just so I remember who they are or where we met. And like a fun fact, if I can remember about a conversation, also makes it into there. So then we both kind of remember each other more.
Yeah, those personal ties are crucial, for sure. I think the biggest thing at the end of the day, have fun with it. Go out there, have fun, be consistent, attend as many events as you can or you want to. And I mean, we all met and play in the same type of pool because we swim in similar circles. So have fun. You'll be surprised at how many people you meet and how big your network gets before you know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed there's a few questions in the chat that seem specific to Startup Boston about where workshops will be and events in person versus online. I think Stephanie would be the right person to ask about that. So you can message her, get in touch after. I
would just say one thing.
I'm like,
it's just like if you can do in person.
Like, I was like, hi.
In person, Startup Boston's magical. That's all I'm gonna say.
You should all come in person. You should all come and hang out and meet new people. And I definitely agree, honestly, when Matt was talking about how it compounds over time, I 1,000% agree with that statement on just like going year over year and then also going to Startup Week for the first time in September and then going to events like Matt host or other folks host in the startup community. Like it's a great way to kind of like meet people and then it just all compounds over time. Like the more and more you see people, the better your network becomes.
I'll be
Two
there.
more
So you'll have at least one person that you can come up to and say hello, and that'll be your icebreaker.
She will be there. Honestly, a lot of people will be there. So she'll be there. I know Matt will be there on Monday if you want to hear about his organization as well. The city of Boston will actually be there Monday night at our opening party tabling. So there's a lot of people from this one event that will be present that you can meet in person. It's going to be fun. For Suffolk University, just to kind of like answer that question, which is like the venue for Start Boston Week specifically, it is located right near Boston Common. It's accessible by the train, the T, you can drive in. And for Suffolk itself, when you enter the building, which is Sargent Law School, there will be people from the Start Week team that will literally be right there when you enter, that will make sure you know what room to go to and what floor it's on. So I got you. Otherwise, you can actually email any of those questions to hello@startupboss.org and we'll answer them there. All right, I'm going to go fade back, but Amalya, I'll let you wrap it up. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for jumping in. Yeah, we just wanted to close with a question about other networking communities that you can join or any upcoming conferences that everyone here can attend. If folks want to let us know about that, and also if you have any information about those that you can throw in the chat, that would be great. Yeah, do any of you have any thoughts on any of those?
I might say one of the best resources is Jonathan Chang from Market Social. I'll try to see if I can put it in the chat. He has an event list that goes out every week. So it's like every publicly available list throughout Boston. And I think it's the most comprehensive list. So I would say to get started, that would be a great place. And the text comes in almost like every Monday night. So it helps you queue up your week. So I'll put that in the chat here. But he does a great job. So hats off to Jonathan.
Nice.
Yeah. I love being at the Venture Cafe, which happens every Thursday from 3 to 8 usually, or no, 4:30 to 8 now. For 3 to 8 is old schedule. Come like around 5, it gets really good. But they also have networking practice workshops there like once a month. So if you want to practice networking, you want to like get to know each other more, especially where I met Elena the first time. You can go there and meet some startups, meet some people, drink some beer. I'm a bartender there. So if you need a beer, just come over there and talk to me and I'll help you.
And that's at the Cambridge Innovation Center, right, Pardees?
Yes.
Sorry, yes. It is at the Cambridge Innovation Center, which is right near the Kendall Square Tea Stop.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Cool. Yeah. And of course, once you start going to events, you start finding out about other events and it kind of snowballs, right? As we've been saying, right? The more you go, the more you find out about other things. Something I've also liked to do is on LinkedIn, just kind of see who the people you're following are following, see who's having conversations online. There's tons of people on LinkedIn who will post lists of events or, we'll be able to invite you to specific networking communities. So takes a little bit of digging and a little bit of research. I think that's also come out in the conversation that research is a big part of all of this. But once you start working on it, right, these things do come together. Any other last thoughts on any of these? Okay, so I think that we're going to have Stephanie and Shanice come on for some closing thoughts.